Hi, this is Alex back again with the tarot card of the month for July 2022, and it's the moon. Now, please excuse my voice. I've got a cold, so sometimes my voice might just give up. Now, getting into this, the element is water, the planet is Neptune, the star sign is Pisces, the season is autumn, and that's in the northern hemisphere. And the cardinal point of direction is west. Uh, the powers at play are getting too close for comfort right now. Mediation is needed to stop leaders from punching on. I see political ideologies at loggerheads, east and west, divisions, separations, reality versus insanity, delusion, and not facing reality. Now, this is a powder keg. And people need to keep their heads down, politically speaking. This feels like people are getting pushed to the limits of endurance, not just world leaders, but ordinary people. And they've been pushed to limits with poverty, food shortages, which are entirely man-made by design and not what you're getting told in the media. Financial difficulties, homelessness and conflict, including Ukraine and the issues with China on the boil and other nations' struggles. We're living in greater instability around the world right now from here on in, and we collectively must take a few steps back and look at the realities of each nation and examine how to resolve these issues. Now, bear in mind, as I've said in predictions on my blog, if you actually read them, 2026, 2027, that's when things start to get nasty. I mean, we're talking conflict, open warfare. So, best idea is to hunker down and insulate yourself as best you can, regardless of where you're living in the world. It's not easy. Sadly, I don't think there's a will or the intention to pull away from any of this conflict. That's not acceptable, and it's unfair on the innocent of the world that have done nothing to deserve this. Divisions create distortion of truth and pushes people apart deliberately. Russia and China are highly skilled in destabilization, but so is the US, and that must be acknowledged too. But they're not the only Western country that can go down that path. That's politics for you. Now, look behind who's saying what and what the reason and agenda are. And I also see tears shed over loss in July. This is heavy loss. A lot of damage done and a lot of lives lost. And there are mind games being played out with this. So sit back, watch and think before jumping to conclusions that are presented to you. The masses are being deliberately led to come to a particular conclusion and belief. How unusual. They want you to react and possibly take action. So stop and think, or you may live to regret it. This is a reactionary month, right? So you cannot afford to get things wrong. Stop and think. And that's the ordinary person in the street too I'm aiming this at. The last time we saw this sort of stuff, we were talking World War II. That's what you're looking down the barrel of. Now, I saw this coming 30 years ago, and I just think, what the hell is going wrong with the human race? All the writing's been on the wall all this time, and everybody just conveniently looks the other way. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Well, actually, you're part of the circus whether you like it or not. We're all accountable for the death and destruction when we take part in it, or we look the other way there. Like World War II, everybody looking the other way, and then the collective guilt. Oh, we didn't know. Yes, you did. It's all in your Akashic records, so when you die and you go to the other side, there are beings that can read your Akashic records, and they know who's got blood in their hands and who doesn't. Let that sink in. War's a horrible thing. So don't also think that the grass is greener on the other side. It may well just be illusionary, designed to sway your opinion. And beware and savvy on how propaganda works. It's more powerful than and ever so more subtle than you actually realise. Do not engage in anything that generates fear, because the chances are you're being manipulated, and some areas of the media may well be engaging in deliberate miscommunication, jumping the gun, so to speak, before they have all the facts on something very serious. There may well be a time gap or a delay, perhaps 2 weeks to a month, before the actual real truth comes out. This is political, so be wary, and it may also involve finances or money. Now, looking at the card, the moon is overshadowing the sun. The moon is trying to block out the sun. You're talking wisdom and enlightenment here. And this affects the human mind and thought process by such things as illusion, deception, misunderstandings, poor communication, resulting in mix-up. You've also got deliberate miscommunication. Depression, fear, and anxiety are indicated in the general interpretation of this card too. Now, the blue sky is nice and clear. There's no clouds present. Normally that's a good sign, but the blue sky is to do with communication. Looking at the little yods, those little yellow teardrop things, there are 15 of them, and the yods symbolize grace. And as I said, 15 of them. Add the 5 and the 1, we get 6, meaning the divine feminine. This card is actually ruled by feminine and male energy. Now, the card number being 18, you take the 8 and the 1, and that makes 9, and that brings it to male energy. And that's logic versus some intuitive, soft, feely, touchy stuff. Now, the sun does its best to illuminate the earth with its light. Notice little spikes around the sun. There's 16 chief rays around the sun and 16 secondary rays. So you add 2 lots of 16, which makes 32. Now take the 3 and the 2 together, that makes 5, the number of man or humanity. This is a balance of male and female energy. It's vital that those energies stay in balance, because conflicts arise when there's imbalance. Now, as I mentioned, the moon is trying to overshadow the sun. Does it succeed? No, not necessarily. It's all down to how we perceive it, each individual. There's also the path in the middle of this card too, implying taking the middle ground, which would be the wise thing to do if we stop and think before reacting. As I said, July is a reactionary month, so be warned. You've got the 2 animals that are present on the card. One's a wolf and one's a dog. Both are howling at the moon. And they're separated by this path, and it's a good evenly divided path. So they've both got their even piece of land here. And it can be looked upon actually as good guy, bad guy, but which one's which? Again, it's all down to perception. Now notice the crayfish coming out of the water. The water is calm where the crayfish emerges from. He doesn't fully emerge though. He gives the suggestion that he will. So hold that thought, it's only a suggestion. And this is a vital piece of information here, so don't forget it because it comes back up again shortly. The dog and the wolf represent the animal self, or the animus. The crayfish is something different. It comes up from the deep universal primordial fear within man. And something always keeps that primordial fear at bay though. Thankfully, from preventing it from escaping and getting loose, creating absolute mayhem and havoc on the human mind and the world at large. It's a very destructive force. So you see, there has to be a powerful counterbalance between the forces. The tower in the card represents polarity. They also represent a pathway in this card. Now again, the road or path sits between the towers here, and it's more of a metaphysical thing that's taking place. It represents a spiritual journey between worlds for those that are ready. The towers represent the Kabbalah tree of life. And this card in a layout can represent encouraging a creative mind, creative, spiritual, or artistic practices. The moon card can also symbolize a spiritual awakening too. Think of the rising of the Kundalini from the base chakra as it rises up the spinal column. Great care must be taken not to let this spiritual energy rise too fast or too soon, as it's so powerful it can affect the human mind, and you're talking about psychological harm. So people, when they're just going into the spiritual path and they're meditating, if they try and force something, you can end up with a nervous breakdown or a mental breakdown. That also can get caused by severe trauma, whether it's psychological abuse, physical abuse. You get the message. Severe shock can trigger that Kundalini. It's kind of like playing with a stick of dynamite if it's handled wrongly. Now, it's advised to see this card as a gateway card, according to Rachel Pollock in her book 78 Degrees of Wisdom. It's a very good book and it's well worth buying. Now, the tarot cards are such an empowering tool for the understanding of the human condition and spiritual understanding, also psychologically, and the entire human experience in general. I look upon the cards as a wise gift to humanity, as we don't come with an instruction book to help us navigate our way through life. The tarot cards are one of the closest tools to human understanding that you can possibly get. Now, the number 9 on the card is emotionally calm, melancholy, satisfied, content, or lonely. In reverse, it can imply lacking discipline and self-awareness, dependency, hostility or inner wisdom, human compassion, and no physical gain. Think spiritual enlightenment here. Now, unusually, I've done the tarot card of the month over 2 days due to other things been going on in my life. I've got a lot of health problems and also my hands are getting worse. So like trying to shuffle cards in that is very difficult. So I've had to do this over a couple of days. I'm actually waiting to find out if I need surgery on my hands. I've got carpal tunnel syndrome, and this is both hands, and then both my elbows I've got trapped nerves. So yeah, and then shoulder and neck pain and whatnot. Falling apart, basically. But yeah, sometimes I have to take a break from the cards because I've got no strength in my hands, or they're really, really painful. So anyhow, getting back into this. There's more planetary upheaval indicated for July 2022, and I'm drawn to the mountains as I look at the card, and we collectively have a long, arduous journey ahead of us. And it's a case of, are we being taken for fools again? You decide. Clearly, things are not what we're being told in the media. Struggles continue along the same path, and no one's paying attention. The leaders of the world and the Ukraine and Russia have taken their eyes off the ball again, distracted by illusion and seeing things that aren't necessarily there. Communication's not clear in the world of international politics, and it's kind of like start, stop. Oh wait, can you clarify that, please? And I feel like there's a problem with the relaying of information not being handled correctly or clearly, and it's like someone sitting in the middle deliberately mixing the information up. And as I look at the card, I've been drawn to the pile of rocks on the edge of the water next to the yellow wolf. There are 7 rocks of various sizes, and they remind me of the saying, never put all your eggs in the one basket. This could quite rightly be the case with the card for July, because there's a warning that we must be on guard for something. And the more I look at the imagery, I feel that someone's overarmed, heavily tooled up, and that could be the Ukraine. And then they're doing what they're told by the West. Now, as I look at both the dog and the wolf, they're both looking up at the moon, so they're not actually looking at what's going on the ground, and don't notice the little crayfish emerging out the water. More fool them, because they're getting caught off guard. That little crayfish can sneak up and steal those rocks without them noticing. Now that's called being asleep at the wheel here, you know, so heed the warning. I just feel someone's going to take their eye off the ball here. This is damn serious, and another country's going to come in and do something. And this is a European country. So I keep feeling like Lithuania, Belarus, someone around that area is up to a little bit of skullduggery, and it just adds to the problem. And they're doing it just for shits and giggles, just because they can. It's not for altruistic reasons. They just want to set the cat among the pigeons. And this is going to end up with nations being very angry with each other, and it destabilizes the situation a bit more. And it'll cause a lot more infighting. But I feel this could become explosive with a month of this particular event, and it's old rivalry and old issues getting stirred up from the past after people have tried to put it all to rest and to work for a common good. You know, so it's someone that's just deliberately doing this because they can. But the young people, they can't get their head around this, because they believe that countries should move on from the past. So watch out for younger people taking to the social media, venting their frustrations of this and blaming older people. So bear this in mind. One simple expression, divide and conquer. You see the picture? If you divide everyone and everyone's at each other's throats, there's no loyalty, there's no cohesion. That's good for an enemy to just walk right in and do what the hell they like, because everybody's having a shot at each other. So dividing people deliberately, creating that disloyalty. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Old habits again. And again, I think East versus West. Someone just going in there and just upsetting everyone. And you know, you're even talking about within families here, when mum and dad believe one thing and the kids, which are maybe in their 30s, they believe something completely different. They weren't alive when a lot of the communist regime was in full swing in Eastern Europe. So it's alien to them, but the older people remember, and they'll see the warning signs of these things, and the younger ones won't believe them. Oh, you're delusional and stop living in the past type situation. So then you've got the older people and the younger people at each other's throats. That actually happened during the English Civil War, actually. If you read up on the English Civil War, families literally were pitted against each other. And again in the American Civil War, there's always someone behind the scenes with the stage management, pulling all the strings and working people like puppets. So be aware, don't react straight away, because there's always someone behind the scenes stirring the pot. But people are going to be feeling the pinch of the shortages, and there's going to be a lot of frustration and fear gripping society, because we're just at present lurching from one disaster after another, and it looks like it could be a whole decade of mayhem. Only time will tell, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be something close to a whole decade of all this mayhem going on. And life's not going to be easy for many of us. Now, when I was about 28 years old, one day I had a new baby, and I'm sitting giving him his bottle on the couch, And it was like one of those moments when you're between worlds, you know, everything around me just seemed to sort of fade away, and I was getting shown a vision of people in great suffering and war. Now, if you think of World War I and then going into the Great Depression and all that terrible poverty and heartache, this is what I saw was coming for the human race again. Now, everything goes in cycles on this planet. That's how this reality is set up. And people need to understand that when they said, oh, the war to end all wars, no. They go on in these big cycles, but it looks like the human race are getting worse as they devolve morally and spiritually. We're actually in the middle of what you would call the end of times. That's an astrological cycle. So when everyone gets to the end of a particular point, people just act crazy and there's wars and all sorts of things going on. It's not the planet getting wiped, it's people that just lose their minds. And it takes them a long time, like years, to come out through the other side of this conflict and turmoil and gain that equilibrium. So we're in the process of that. It's a crash and burn thing that happens, and we're all astrologically programmed to do this crash and burn and then re-emerge like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So we're in the middle of that just now. It cannot be stopped. Any astrologer can tell you by looking at the charts of the world, each nation, what's coming up, and that ballpark area of when it's going to happen. So basically, we're locked into this. How we react, though, that's up to the individuals. I would prefer to keep the moral and spiritual high ground and don't harm other people. And speak your truth. And people have the right to speak their truth, and they have the right to have their feelings and beliefs validated, not invalidated, because what's the point of being on this earth when you have no free will, not allowed to express your feelings without fear of being killed? You know, you got to take these things into account. This is a planet that's set up for polarities, and we must not suppress people's freedom of thought, freedom of spirituality, or whatever. Doesn't matter, because all we keep doing is just making this reality worse and worse and worse. And yes, this situation cannot be halted, but it's how long is it going to take us to come out the other end? That's the crucial thing too. But remember, act in haste and repent at leisure. So hot, impulsive actions, not in our best intentions. So try and stay calm and rational. Think twice. And when in doubt, don't do anything. Just wait, watch, and listen. And this is a global warning. So stay safe and stay calm and stay informed. And yeah, just do your best to get through what's coming. The ordinary person has absolutely no control over world affairs, but they have control over how they react and treat each other, and include animals into that, because animals are suffering too. There's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of cruelty in this world, because, as I said, it's a third dimension, it's geared for polarities. Animals don't agree to this. Humans have the moral high ground and live from the heart and do what they feel is right. Okay, and that includes not harming other people or any other life form, because that's just not right and it's against the laws of spirit. Okay, I'll sign off now, and I'll do the tarot card of the month for August soon. Hang in there. Bye bye.